So we've got one more talk standing between you and lunch. So for those of you in the virtual audience, you've been seeing a lot of her the last 2 days, or hearing her piped in through the speakers in the ceiling. But now we're bringing to the main stage our Attack for Mac and Linux lead, Kat Self.
Hello, my name is Kat Self. I am the macOS and Linux, I want to say more like initiative for the Attack Enterprise team. So a little bit about me. Let me get closer to the proper location. A little bit about me. I formerly was an artist. So there were some people that we actually got to interview on the ATT&CKcon couch that previously came from an artist background, which I love. Definitely the windy road that led straight to here, right, for some of us. Then I went into military intelligence, served at war a couple of years. I then got a computer science degree. Target took a chance on me, and I was able to do software development. I moved into becoming a red teamer and then eventually a threat hunter. So amazing progression there. And then MITRE stole me away with the lure of being able to work on macOS and Linux, and then also the attack evaluations team, which I've loved my time there. So why this initiative for macOS and Linux, right? Let me set a timer to make sure I don't go over. The reason why is because as things evolve, naturally, it's easy, we have over 300 sub-techniques, right? That's a lot of techniques to keep track of. So as time evolves, we start to understand things differently, new releases come out, right? Different ways to have behavior. Oh, nice little timer there. But the reality is things evolve, and we also need those subject matter experts to come in and make sure that we're still being true to the behaviors that we have in Attack. And that's kind of the point for the initiative. So Miscreants gave me this really super adorable logo. Part of what we've tried to do over this last year, which is one thing that I really want to cover with you all, is they gave me this honor to be able to be in charge of updating macOS and Linux techniques. And what I've tried to do is actually go directly back to the community, to you all, where you all can and bring you all into it, right? Because the reality is Attack is community driven. One of those initiatives was we were able to participate in a Blue Team Village DEF CON workshop called the Hunt for Red Apples, where this is where I met the Miscreants that gave me this logo, because they had this great little logo for that workshop. But it was a really great opportunity for MITRE to be able to be involved with a DEF CON workshop, specifically on macOS, right? And we were able to work with 5 other key researchers, where it gave us a much better broad understanding of other people in the community and just that engagement. It was just really beneficial for us to go through. But it also pointed out some great identifying facts on what makes macOS so different. macOS has a lot of hardware considerations built into it, right? One of the nice things about Mac is that when you buy it, there's a lot of built-in hardware security, so their users don't have to worry about things. Notarization is an example of that. For applications, when they're building on macOS, they have these programs that they can opt in for, specifically sandboxing, right? For a long time, there was a huge amount of misconfigurations because apps could either participate in the sandbox or not. And then what that did was it allowed a level of security and peace of mind for a lot of users, because even if you did get access into the application, you were limited from being on the actual host itself because you were inside of the sandbox for the application. Another big thing, I don't know about you all, but I've loved being on macOS for a long time. I also like playing games, and macOS has no problem dropping hardware changes that are no longer supported. So back in I want to say the 90s, this was a really common theme. I think they've gotten a little bit better about warning their developers now, but there was a lot of games that did not support macOS because they knew that they were just going to change the hardware one day and never tell anybody. So that also happens on this platform. And local admin is really common. So Windows does a great job of being able to segregate those permissions. However, on macOS, if you think about the environments that it's in, there's a lot of developers, a lot of graphics artists, right? They tend to have local admin to be able to get those tools supported, to be able to run test, and test vocabulary is very hard. Instances. So if I need to run a quick web server to be able to see, is my app connecting correctly to this database, that requires often a lot of local admin. So there's those considerations. Linux. Who here knows of an entire fleet comprised of Linux users, endpoints? Really? That's impressive. One. We're gonna talk after this because that's amazing. I haven't heard until right now. I haven't heard of any, and that's kind of one of the big differences, right? Like we talk about Linux, but the reality is Linux is not very well represented as an endpoint, which is where a lot of focus is. There's a lot of different distributions. When we're doing Linux techniques, we're kind of like, well, what distribution do we discuss? Because it's different on every single flavor, right? So how do you represent that well and be a good steward of the community without showing too much favoritism to one or the other? Another one is it's open source community driven. And then also infrastructure. Like Linux is often represented in environments for infrastructure. And let's be real, even incident responders have to go through a lot of permissions to be able to access those servers to get the logs that they need. So finding open source reporting on that, which brings us to what do they have in common, right? Like the reporting on that, right? So the nice thing about ATT&CK is if it's not open source, it's not going to be in there, right? Like it has to be in the wild, it's there, it's been like reported on. So if there is no in the wild reporting on these Linux softwares, then it's not going to be an attack. So the reporting is sparse, which is definitely something that we've kind of come up against. It's like, how do we address this? Also, the reporting, as I mentioned before, is often highly sensitive. So how can you expect these companies to like, hey, look at this embarrassing, situation that happened? There's also a focus on vulnerabilities versus actual behaviors or hands-on keyboard, which is really tricky when you're trying to like cover these techniques, right? So these are some of the obstacles that we've had to address. Which brings us to the first release that I was put on the team. It was kind of like, okay, look at all this work that I did. And then I realized after the release, I was like Adam asked me, I was like, okay, so when are you going to be done? And I was like, oh, what does done even look like? Like, what does done look like on something that's constantly evolving? And that's when I kind of came to the realization that like done is better than perfect. And sometimes I think in this industry, we like to mix those up on the opposite, right? It's perfect. So what we decided was our goal was just to become a go-to resource, right? We really wanted to be a platform, or not platform, sorry, a place where if you were learning about Mac OS and adversary tradecraft, or you were a defender, that you could come and it was clear enough, understandable enough, and also well-resourced enough that you at least had a place to start. So that's kind of what we did. We went through the descriptions, we added additional context, we went through our detections, although Lex is going to go through and make those all way better, and we are definitely working with her on that. But we kind of went through those and addressed a lot of little details. So out of the 385, which we scoped to because of changes, we fully went through about 232, which is actually a huge number for those of you that have had to go through technique by technique, which we're very proud of. And I think we edited about 52, a little bit over those because we didn't count one release. And that is a team of me, Dylan, and Ivy, which you'll definitely see, like we'll talk about us later. But it was 3 of us, and of course also the rest of the ATT&CK team that we kind of hit that up or were able to accomplish that. So in the wild, Kerberos is one of these. This was originally just a Windows platform. You can absolutely do this on Linux and Mac OS. So definite call out to Tim. Also a big call out to Cody. Cody was one of the original ATT&CK members that actually kind of built out the Mac OS portion of ATT&CK. So both of them, we were able to work with the community to kind of update Kerberos and be able to add those platforms, add context, and add actually specific technical details to it. Another one that Ivy worked on, because that one was Dylan's, was hidden users. We noticed a lot of times that there would be 2 platforms like Windows and Mac OS because, again, they're well represented in enterprise environments. But there was no Linux. And then we were like, we really need to add these details. And so that's part of what we did. We also, in the detection section, we try to give you guys a couple of technical specific, like for Mac OS, key value pairs, for plist files, but also like links to the documentation that allow you to go a little bit deeper to understand the context of what that looks like. So those are just kind of some highlights of what we did, some lessons learned. There's this great African proverb: if I want to go fast, I'll go by myself. But if I want to go far, we'll go together. And that's actually exactly what we focused on. So we decided to, while we're doing this initiative, we really wanted to be able to create an environment and a community, or at least a place, right? It's nice to be able to point somewhere and be like, go here, instead of like the 17 different Slack rooms, plus the Twitter accounts, plus the blogs, plus the tools. We just wanted one place to go and like, hey, if you're want to talk to ATT&CK, go here. So our team's actually committed. So Dylan, Ivy, and me, while we finish up this initiative, we committed to kind of being on Mondays at Mountain Time, because I'm in Denver, and we committed to being online. So just to be there to ask questions, answer questions, just to engage with the community. If there's something that we can do better, if there's a data source that you guys suggest, or anything that we're going to go over, which I'll hit on our roadmap, like that's the place to do it, where you can easily contact us versus like following all the right people on Twitter. So this is our roadmap. Essentially is we've started off just talking with the community, generating connections, really just trying to bring you guys in, and honestly identifying people that want to work with us. And then also we've created the Slack channel. We're starting to be present there, get more engaged on Twitter. This release that we've already announced, April 25th, we're hoping to be done with all the big updates for macOS. So you're welcome. Those hopefully won't be anything giant after this, but we've really worked hard to go through and add context, add platforms where they were relevant, and do our due diligence, essentially. So after that, we're actually going to be pivoting specifically to Linux. Our goals with Linux has got a lot of tricky things about it. For example, where is the line between IoT and Linux? Right, like Linux endpoints versus IoT or cloud, or like there's so many different considerations. Also, the data sources like that Lex is going to go through, like how can we better represent those for defenders? Because there's a lot of gaps there that we can do better. And then also completing, we hope to be fully complete with all the Linux updates by our October release, which is typically October. Don't hold me that, it's whenever that release is, you know. So saith. But yeah, so that's kind of our goal here. As always, we really are better together. I know I pitch that pretty much at every time I talk to you all. Over this last year, we've gotten the opportunity to speak at Objective by the Sea. We've had another opportunity to do the DEF CON workshop. And we've really just tried to be a part of the community. I want to encourage that, because the reality is you guys have access to all of that data. And like, we're here for you. So it's more of like, how can we work together to then represent that? I know we all hit that super hard, but I'll just do that again. And then after October, we'll probably stop this initiative, and then we'll become one team again, which we love, because that's really what it's about, right? That's really our definition of done, of successful. And so if you have questions, we'll be there on Slack on Mondays.
Always one team, and thank you so much.
All right, just bounce.
Not just for the presentation, but also just injecting, like you said, all of the content and bringing, macOS and Linux back alive, but the community. Myself included, we're talking about biases. I like Windows. So thank you. Shout out to Dylan and Ivy. Happy Friday, Junior, for teaching me what a plist file is over and over and over again. I get it, Granny Smith, reg keys. That's my best analogy. But we'll give you a minute to get back to the ATT&CKcon couch, but thanks again.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Thank you all.